The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles. I'm Charles Firth, and today, instead of Dom, who's off doing more important work, we have, unfortunately, Mark Humphries.
My apologies, listeners.
Yeah, so
Sorry about that. Yep.
if you can just, anyway.
I'll give it a good shot.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Should we just go to an ad? Yeah. Okay. Okay, now, Mark, long time since you've been here. When was the last time you were on the podcast?
Possibly, I know I came on here last year just before I was hosting the Parliamentary MidWinter Ball. That was about September last year. And so we did a
Yes, and you promised to come on and tell us
and debrief
how it was going.
And I lied to you.
Well, we never invited you back.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
it's a different way of framing it, but sure. Yes, and that was an extraordinary experience because it basically, if for those who don't know, it's where all the politicians, or most of them, come together. They dress up in, it's black tie, and most of the Canberra Press Gallery are there as well. And it's a big sort of fundraising event for charity. And as part of it, I was brought in to do a 20-minute roast, essentially. Well, they didn't frame it that way. That's why I chose to interpret the brief. Yeah, so I was hosting it, but I was using it as an opportunity. It was essentially like the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's something which I've always enjoyed watching.
You're basically the Stephen Colbert of Australia.
Well, that's for others to say, and I'm happy to repeat it. So that was the sort of the job. So you do sort of 20 minutes of material, and then I have to introduce the Prime Minister, and then who then delivers a sort of comedy piece of his own,
yes.
and then introduce Peter Dutton to deliver his own comedy piece. And what was very strange last year was that, and I don't blame Dutton for this is perhaps my fault, but he sort of just misread the cue of when I needed him to come to the stage. And so I had about maybe 2 minutes of jokes about him that I wanted to do before his speech. But I think once I said his name, he just started walking towards the stage.
No.
And so for the last minute of my, a minute of jokes about Peter Dutton, Dutton was standing
right next to you.
Right next to me. And I was just like, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to get through these jokes, and you're going to have to stand there and listen to them. And so that was extraordinary. And it was also doubly extraordinary to then hear Peter Dutton, deliver a comedic monologue. And
was he good?
It was all right. Yeah, no, him and Albanese both. Yeah, they were they were solid. They were solid. Yeah, and but it's such a strange environment where the people that I thought would be kind of bothered by some of the jokes that I'd done seemed weirdly thrilled to be mentioned or something.
Yes.
And it was strange. I had people come up to me afterwards say, I was at the minister's table. I won't say specifically which, but like I was at the minister, whoever's table. And when it came to the jokes about them, I was too nervous to laugh. But then they were laughing really hard. So when they laughed, I felt like I could laugh. And I thought that was so fascinating. And yeah, people that I thought I'd been quite mean to and really quite pointed seemed to love the attention. But
yes.
I mean,
it's almost like politicians are egomaniacs.
It's almost like that. It's almost like that. Some might say that. But what's your experience been of having? Because I think so much of what we do and have done over the years is from the sidelines, but then you had much more sort of interaction with politicians themselves. This was the one time of the year where I'm actually in the room with them. So what have you found? Have you found that to be the case where people that you thought you'd been quite mean to actually loved the attention? Or?
Yes. No, right from the word go, you'd say really nasty jokes. Like I remember for some reason Anthony Albanese sticks out in my mind as somebody who he'd just sold out the entire left. We're not talking about current politics.
This is the first time.
This is the first, like back in 2003. And for some reason, it was in Canberra. It was some big conference that all the politicians were at. And it was a dinner. I don't think it was a MidWinter Ball, some other dinner. And I remember we had prepared a whole lot of stuff that was going to just destroy Anthony Albanese because he'd sold out. It was all about Labor refugees. He'd just sold out the entire left in order to stop the boat, sort of, and join that sort of bandwagon that Peter Reith and John Howard were peddling. And instead, not only did he beam with laughter and huge smile as we were just roasting him from the stage, but then he came up and got a photo with us afterwards.
Yeah,
you're going, but
yeah,
were you not listening? And it was but back then he was really quite junior. He was this junior burger, and he got mentioned in the speech.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that reminds me of how under the Morrison government there was a sketch I'd done where I think I was Morrison's video director. And
oh, yes, I remember that. Yeah, where you were sort of talking about how to – you were talking like an auteur.
Yes, exactly. That's right, yeah. That's right. Tony Chevelle was the name of the character. I wore like a turtleneck and glasses. Anyway, and yes, and I remember Morrison then tweeted the sketch out saying, very funny, love your jokes, Mark. And it's just like, yeah. Because on some level, it's like, oh my God, the Prime Minister's tweeting about me. On the other level, it's just like, yeah, but I can see what you're doing. You're trying to kind of reclaim it. You're trying to spin it your own way. And the same thing happened a few weeks later with Josh Frydenberg, where this time I was his director because he'd made a piece of content for social media, which was just he just wasn't a good day for him on camera, and yes, and so same thing from him, and then he brought it up in Parliament. It was in question time, and he referenced me, and it was really interesting just to see that kind of, oh, okay, if you kind of just pretend that you're okay with it, it sort of neutralizes it and act as if you're sort of in on the joke, and
the person who most annoyed Craig, who did most of it, like all the best stunts were always given to Craig when we were doing The Chaser. And he always used to get incredibly annoyed at Peter Costello. And I think after a while we ended up just not doing Peter Costello because Peter Costello was the original person to come up with the strategy of just laughing along.
Yes, right.
And actually he'd say things like, oh, you're really funny guys, aren't you? With this sort of like just tinge of sarcasm. But it actually just made everything look unusable because it was just too sort of cheesy sort of, everyone's getting along with each other type thing, which is not what you want. You want the confrontation of the politician running away or...
Well, I loved that thing that you had maybe it was 2 years ago, and I'm trying to think whether it was Lachlan that did it or I can't remember, or was it maybe Alexia? But you'll have to remind me. And it was with Barnaby Joyce, and it was some setup that you guys did. I think it's outside of Parliament House, and he sort of was annoyed by the interaction. He then walked away, came back, and went, "Hang on, where are you from?" And then whoever it was said, "Chaser," and then just the reaction from Joyce of,
None of the medical advice contained in the Chaser report should legally be considered medical advice. The Chaser report.
One thing I've always enjoyed about Barnaby Joyce is he's not afraid to, he has no hesitation about giving a very human reaction to things. Like if a question on Q&A, Sunrise, whatever it is, comes up that he doesn't like, he doesn't mask, he doesn't try and be a politician. He just goes, rolls his eyes and gets all sort of flustered and pissed off by it. But I mean, back when there was those sort of stunts thing, I mean, I think about the one that always made me laugh was, I think it was like the whole premise was that the politicians were all bashing refugees, and I think you had Craig with a bat.
Yes,
and then and of course it was so Latham that Latham was the one that grabbed the bat and then hit Craig with it.
It's perfect.
So anyway, I'm hosting the MidWinter Ball again this year, and it's coming up in 3 weeks. So currently putting together my material for that. But it was funny just who came up to me afterwards, and the first two people that came up and were so complimentary. were Bob Catter and Michael McCormack, and then I had to go through all my material and go, did I do some homophobic jokes or something? Like,
That's right, exactly.
How did I get those two? Yeah. But yeah, Catter was the first one to come up. Very funny, mate, and it was just surreal, and yeah. So anyway, bracing myself for that.
And did anyone get angry at you?
Not well. I don't. Not to my knowledge. I mean, no one came up to me and expressed it.
But were any complaints lodged with the National Press Club?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not aware of. I mean, I've been asked back, so clearly I must have done something right, or maybe I didn't go hard enough.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's the aim. Actually, is to not get invited back. If you're getting invited back, you're not doing it very well.
Mate, no, you're the Billy Crystal. You walked along that line.
I'm a people pleaser. I don't like to hurt people's feelings. But it was a funny moment during I had to do a sort of run through beforehand, just so the organisers could just check everything was all right. And there was one joke where it was about one of the sponsors. And they just say, "Yeah, Mark, that's great. Just checking you're comfortable with that Qantas joke. Just that you've got there." I'm very comfortable with the Qantas joke. Are you comfortable with the Qantas joke? Yeah, no. Of course. Just obviously they've got a table tonight. And I'm just like, yes, that's why it's funny.
So you did the joke?
Did the joke, absolutely, and got a laugh from every other table.
So I'm presuming that there's some PwC material.
Oh, there'd have to be. I mean, there's sadly, no sponsors this year, because last year there was a bit of a scandal because
some comedian pissed off all the sponsors with his jokes about them.
That's it. Well, Woodside and Shell were a couple of the sponsors, and so I did have a line about that. But so I think after that happened, they've just gone no corporate sponsors. So I presume I'm doing the show pro bono this year. I don't know, but just to do my bit.
Your bit for those struggling politicians.
That's it. Yeah, if everyone could all just chip in, because some of them only have 7 investment properties.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And so you know who I think you should do some material on?
Oh, yeah.
Who I think would take it really well.
Lydia Thorpe?
Yeah, Lydia Thorpe.
Lydia Thorpe, yeah. Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of comedy to be trammelled in this whole voice thing. I think you should, as a white comedian, just
I think I'm uniquely qualified.
Stumbled in and
that's it.
And have a shot.
Yeah, I think a good 18 or 19 of my 20 minutes should be devoted to that. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's I mean it's sort of like there's a weird thing where it's because it doesn't get released publicly, which is sort of
but that's a change though, isn't it? Because it used to get leaked. And didn't they crack down on it last year?
Yeah.
And it really didn't get leaked.
Nothing came out. I leaked part of my monologue. I put out just one of my jokes because I was very pleased with the reaction to it. Which shall I do it for the people at home?
Yeah.
And it was just it was about how, because I think because Anthony Albanese has a pet dog, Toto. That's right. And so I think it was isn't it wonderful to see a dog back in the lodge? Yes. Anthony Albanese has his pet dog Toto. Not to be outdone, though, the former Prime Minister had Alex Hawke, and it was you can hear on the audio the laugh and then the ooh. And then I go, he's not here, is he? And he wasn't. But so that to me is the sweet spot. The laugh and then the ooh. That's what I'm aiming for.
And do you go out with them afterwards?
No, well, there's a dance floor, so that's where it's sort of weird.
That's very weird.
Yeah, so last year there was Marsha Hines was performing.
Oh, that's all right.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did a bunch of disco numbers, which I was thrilled about.
Yeah.
Disco dancer myself. And so that's kind of weird, just seeing who, who's chummy. I mean, everyone, it is that sort of thing where I think they just, for that night, they put their, weapons down. And but yeah, it is weird sort of, gyrating on the floor and suddenly bumping into, Susan Lee or what have you. Dressed as Tina Turner was weird.
And then do you pop off to the prayer room afterwards? That was a couple of years ago.
That was a different time. So that's it was all very respectable. Yes, no one disgracing themselves. Well, I can think of one, but I won't say.
Let's just say he's in this room and he's you.
I got Marsha has that effect on me, really. Yeah.
So, Mark, well, good luck.
Thank you.
Will you come back afterwards and debrief us?
Will I come back in a year from now?
It's had time to marinate, to germinate.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's
exactly.
right.
Yeah. Yes, no, I'll come back in a year. Thank you.
Okay.
Gladly.
Our gear is from Road. We're part of the Iconoclast Network. Get you next time.